want to give him the satisfaction of saying his name because he doesn't even deserve the follows. He could use them, but he's not going to get them.
Oh.
What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Before we go any further, I'm just going to ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to comment just to help me on the algorithm, but you don't know what to comment, just leave a knife, because Kim Congdon and Sarah Weinshank are already coming for my neck. Well, I guess we had to get to part 2 sometime. I'm gonna apologize to you guys because this took a little bit longer than I wanted to take, but only because I wanted to talk about what it is that's happened and kind of the fallout that's happened since I put up part 1. If the out-of-town visitors are coming here regularly and they're not doing well, why are you still making room for them and giving them several spots? How about you drop them to one spot? And then how about Dylan Carlino? Dylan Carlino is a regular there that's not getting spots. He's very funny. How about there's a couple of the newer people that you haven't been giving spots to that are in development? How about when it comes to the door guys, there's a couple of door guys that you like and you put on everything, and then there's other door guys that don't get to do anything but the crew shows and maybe get one show a week while your favorite door guys are getting lots of spots. How about spreading that around a little bit more instead of just making the club about your personal favorites? And I was like, look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I shouldn't have to wait to be one of your personal favorites in order to get spots or in order to get treated fair at the club. It really should be about the stand-up, which is something I said to him. To me, the biggest problem at the club is the booker, Adam Eget. I think he was a huge problem at the Comedy Store as well. I don't think Adam Eget knows what he's looking at. I don't think Adam Eget should have a job. I've told him that on text and I've told him that in person. Because the truth is, I've held this in for 10 years, I think it is, that I've known Adam. Maybe closer to 8 or 9 that I've known Adam. And for anybody that doesn't know what a booker is, a booker pretty much picks the schedules for the comedians. And my thinking that Adam is the problem isn't just because of my personal experience, and specifically the door guys have noticed the amount of favoritism that Adam shows just isn't fair. And there's no way that you're not going to eventually end up in a toxic work environment when you are running so much on your favorites and not really paying attention to the stand-up itself. Because every time that I'm in any room there, I always kill it. And I'm not just fooling myself. Once in a while, I'll have a set that's not as good as another, but for the most part, and anybody that's seen me perform there can verify this, that's a door guy, that's a security person, even the servers all there love me and when I go up, and I'm always killing it there. But over the months, I start noticing that I'm getting fewer and fewer sets per week, which a part of me is fine with because I'm doing enough stuff around town. I'm not relying on that, but at the same time, I'm noticing that I'm getting fewer spots, and I'm like, how is it I'm still killing it, and in some cases killing it even harder, but getting fewer spots? And then it hits me on a very logical level. It's like, oh yeah, because other comics are coming to town and they have to accommodate for them, so of course there's going to be fewer spots. So for a while there, I had no real resentment about it because I was staying at about 2 spots a week, which, in case you haven't done the math so far, translates to about $200 a week. And I'm like, whatever, it's cool. I'm doing 2 spots a week. I still get to work out there quite a bit. I go for Sundays and Mondays, which is the crew show. Those nights, it's like an open mic, so obviously I'm working for free. But on those nights, I noticed Adam always puts me in the last spot. And I didn't really think anything about that until at one point I had not remembered that I had something to do on a particular night. It was like a Saturday and I wasn't going to be able to make my spot. So I asked if I could trade out spots with somebody. And then he told me the only other person that I could trade out with would be Jeffrey Berner because he liked me in the last spot, which is otherwise known as the Sam Kinison spot. And then it hit me. It's like, yeah, I do only do the last spot. I thought that was just a coincidence. I didn't realize that Adam had it set up so that I was only doing the last spot. Keep in mind, Adam is also never around for my sets. So it's not like he's able to see what I'm doing, but that's a part of why I would show up on crew show, is so that if Adam wanted to see me, because sometimes he's there on Sunday or Monday, usually Monday, but I would show up so that if he wanted to get an update and see what kind of material I was doing and stuff like that, that he could actually see it. Because a lot of people have said that Adam likes comics to do new material, which I do that anyway, so I'm like, I'm perfectly comfortable with him seeing me and the level to which I kill it, so I continue to get spots. Also, I don't mind doing the mic because usually I'll do 3 or 4 sets after the mic, and they're all unpaid. It's open mics. It's me working on new stuff and doing whatever I want to do in the way that I want to do it. And so I'm working hard on everything I'm doing, but I'm not really tripping over even that, even though I was like, why do I only get to do the last spot of the night? And then it turns into a situation where even when I go to cruise show, no matter when I check in, I end up going last. Sometimes I get there last, which is when I sign in, but even if I don't get there last, I still end up going last. And I don't know why that was. Adam claims to have no control over that, and he said it wasn't his choice, but I have literally had door guys, because door guys run the cruise show, they host it. I have had door guys literally come to me on more than one occasion and tell me, do you want to go up next? And next meaning I'm going to be earlier than I usually am. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll go up next. And then they'll come back to me and say, Adam said that I have to wait to put you up till later. And then immediately after, and this has happened more than once, they go to another professional comedian and say, Adam wants to know if you want to go up next. So tell me that that isn't some kind of bias or preferential treatment coming into play at that point. And I'm not going to throw any door guys under the bus, and I'm not going to throw any other comics under the bus when I say this part. Believe me, we'll get to the part where I'll throw a couple of people under the bus. But at this point, I'm just saying that that's something that I've had happen more than once and literally go down exactly the way I said. So I start getting like, okay, well, I'm getting fewer spots. I'm basically relegated to the last spot of the night. I'm supposed to feel flattered because that's the Sam Kinison spot. I wouldn't mind if I weren't only considered for the Sam Kinison spot, but it's what it is. And I'm killing it even in that last spot, which you know they're tired because the last spot, a lot of times they got there before 10. Now it's 12:45, 12:25, something like that. That's usually when my spots were. And so there does come a point where it gets like, okay, well, I should probably address this with Adam and find out what's going on. So I first asked Asana Mod and Derek Poston in the green room 2 weeks ago now, maybe 3. Hey, if I want to talk to Adam about my spots, what would be the best way for me to go about that? And they both look at me like Adam is their abusive husband and is like, oh, I wouldn't do that. And then Asan is the one that says, I have never seen that go well. And in my head, I'm like, I can't just talk to the booker about something that's related to the bookings. That's not allowed to even inquire or find out if there is something going on, because if there's something that I could possibly correct, then I'm fine with it. But I know that I'm professional. I know I get along with everybody there. I know I'm not doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing there. I don't even drink, so it's not like you can be like, well, he comes here and drinks all the alcohol up in the green room. So I don't really understand what's going on, but I do want to find out about it. And like I said, at first I just dismissed it to, well, there's other comics coming in town. But then because you know, like the list of the comics is right at the door because you have to introduce the next comic. So you see the early list is right here and then the late list is right here. So you can see what other comedians have been on particular nights. And I couldn't help but notice that there would be the same comedian sometimes doing a set on the early show and then doing a set on the late show. And it's kind of like, okay, well, I know these comics and they're cool or whatever, but I don't really see why they need to be on 2 shows in one night and then I get 1 or none. And then some people are getting 4 to 6 shows in a week, which I don't begrudge them that, but how about you just take one of those away from them and give it to someone like me on the weeks that you say you don't have any room, that you can't put me on at all. But I hadn't gotten to say this until this point. I just was noticing the way that things work and the amount of spots. And it's like when other people come in town, if I'm going to do less spots, I do think that's okay. But why aren't other people doing less spots as well, other than they're your personal favorites? Which I know the visitors that we're having come into town, and I'll be honest, the visitors are his friends and they usually do not do well. Like, nothing against her, and I know she's been on Joe Rogan Experience, but Kim Congdon, a lot of times she takes out her phone and she will actually read premises from her notes and then try to make up a joke on the spot or work on something that's brand new, and she's just not good enough for that. So it's not a good experience for the audience, and I may not put new stuff for an entire set, but what I will do is I'll do bits that work and then sprinkle in new stuff so that it's not always me doing the same set. Also, so I don't get bored, but most importantly, because I think that I owe that to audiences that have in some cases waited months to get tickets to be able to go to the Mothership, and in some cases do actually want to see me, because believe it or not, here in Austin, a fair amount of people do know me, have heard about me. There's comedy tourism here. There's a lot of people that know the deep cuts like me, and they're actually excited about seeing me. And so I feel like I owe them an actual performance. They're paying $12 for Liquid Death, which is canned water. So yeah, I may not do a set full of just new stuff, but I will always do stuff that will vary it up, not only for the audience, but for myself. Then you'll have Kim Congdon go up and literally eat it.
That'll do, big.
Not do well at all. And this has been several sets I've seen from her. Sarah Wineshank. I like her, but I've known Sarah for 8 years and I have never seen her kill it. So does she deserve several spots every time she comes to town at what's supposed to be the biggest and best comedy club in the world? I even had Sarah on my show. So it's not like I feel like she shouldn't be allowed to grow. I just know that as it stands, she does not deserve to get that many spots. I don't really even think she deserves any spots at the Mothership, to be honest.
There's lots of people that think that I'm not funny.
But Adam will load her up with spots, because both of them, he loads them up with spots, but then they don't do well. And for some reason, he doesn't notice that. And I think a good booker, Adam, even if he dated Sarah back in the day, and maybe that's the reason that he continues to give her spots, should be able to put his personal feelings aside and say, look, this is what's best for the club. Don't save that speech for me and then tell me why I shouldn't be getting booked when clearly I kill it at your club. Instead, you want to put your ex-girlfriend up. And Kim and Sarah are both cool girls. They're cool to hang out with. They're cool to chat with. I'm just talking about the comedy. And when I mentioned Kim Congdon, Kim does have potential to be funny. Sometimes she is very funny. Nothing personal. We've even DM'd each other recently. Not too long ago, we DM'd each other. But she knows how she's doing at the club. When she's going through her phone and scrolling and just trying to make things funny in the moment, that's not necessarily gonna be the best recipe for an audience that is paying what they're paying to be at the best comedy club in the world. There's also a comic by the name of Benji Aflalo when he comes to town, which I know you've never heard the name Benji Aflalo, but when he comes to town, they make sure he gets plenty of spots. Is he anything spectacular? No. And I know that's only 3 names that I mentioned, but if you were to hand me the list for the last couple of weeks or even a couple of months, I could tell you who does well and who doesn't do well. I don't even think Adam is at the club enough or pays attention enough to actual sets to be able to say. And when it comes to me specifically, he's rarely even there by the time that I go up. So how is it this person that's rarely there can tell me or anybody else how it is I'm doing at the club or whether or not I deserve spots? But then when I finally do ask him about it, because I didn't mention that, and I still haven't mentioned those names to him specifically because I know he would get upset because they're his friends. And I know to a degree everything runs somewhat on favorites, but to that degree it seems a little bit ridiculous, and it also seems like everything Joe Rogan has ever talked about has been on things being merit-based, and with me doing as well as I do, and keep in mind, I'm not flattering myself. I really do that well at that club. But for some reason, I'm getting less spots, and in some cases, no spots. So when I asked Hassan about it, and he said that it wasn't really an option, and then one of the things they told me was just get more famous. It's like, I didn't think this club was supposed to be about that. That's not what Rogan says on his podcast. He actually says it's the opposite of that. So I'm being told to get more famous by guys that work closely with Rogan. So then I called Brian Simpson and asked about it. And Brian Simpson is Brian Simpson, and him and Joe are friends, and he has a Netflix special coming out. So his situation is different, and he's like, just talk to Adam. And I was like, Adam doesn't really talk to me, because when I do see Adam, he'll say hi and look down, or he'll just blow past me without saying hi, or sometimes I'm in the same circle as him, which this has been rare, but I have been in the same circle as him before, and he will not acknowledge me, won't look at me, nothing, just pretends like I'm not there. And so I tell Brian, me and Adam don't really talk like that, and I tell him he doesn't really acknowledge me when he sees me, so I don't really know, because you know, if a person's not acknowledging you, how do you get their attention? So I wasn't really sure how to handle it, and so I get hit up a couple days later, and Brian's like, did you end up talking to Adam? And I was like, no, I went ahead and left it alone. And then the week that I asked them about it, I ended up getting 0 spots. Then in the week in between, I ended up getting a spot. Then we get to another week, and then I get no spots. So that's when I decided to see how I could reach him finally, because at this point, it's just like, I want to find out what's going on. And most importantly, I don't think that it should be hard to communicate with somebody that's so essential to the club if you're working that club. But like I told you, everybody that I talked to was like, Adam doesn't like anybody talking to him about the booking. And even door guys who are employees of the Mothership don't feel comfortable talking to Adam. I've had the door guys open up to me about the fact that they weren't getting spots, and I've tried to give them pep talks about that. But at a point, some of these door guys are realizing that they're just taking out trash for Joe Rogan's club. And I don't say that at all as in an insulting way, but they're directing traffic in the lobby, telling people where the bathrooms are, letting people know how the showroom works, seating people. And yeah, there is value in that part of it, because while they're doing that on the time in between, they get to watch professional comics and they get to see shows go on. But like I said, some of them are only getting 1 spot a week, and then for the most part, they're just working for Joe Rogan's club. They don't have any interaction with Joe Rogan himself. They're not getting seen by big comics themselves unless it's just something random. And there are some really great up-and-coming comics that are working as door guys, and they're getting looked over because Adam has his favorites that he wants to see in those positions when they're able to host or feature for Fat Man, which is the big room. And I don't think that that's fair, and I don't think that that's the dream anybody was sold on. And some of them have told me that they've tried to talk to Adam before, and he is not very welcoming of them asking him any questions or wanting to know what's going on. So when it comes down to it, everybody there is cool. The entire staff is cool. The security is cool. The door guys are cool. The biggest comics in the world are cool. But for some reason, the booker is the biggest diva in the comedy club. How does it make sense that the booker is the biggest diva in the comedy club? And let's talk about the fact that Adam has never been a comedian before. So if you've never been a comedian before, how can you tell a 20-year comedian that actually is good at it how to be a comedian? You've never done it. I don't care how many you watch, you don't know what it takes to be a comedian. And I know some people would say, well, a lot of bookers haven't necessarily done stand-up. But in the biggest comedy club in the world, should the booker not at least know what he's saying if he's going to be in charge of young, impressionable comics? And if the booker's going to have strong opinions about what comedy should and shouldn't be, shouldn't he at least know firsthand what he's talking about instead of just guessing because he's seen what other successful comics have done? And even that, how much of the process does he actually see from big comics? Because as far as I know, Adam is mainly about fangirling over really big comics. So when Shane Gillis walks in the door, Adam is the first one to be welcoming committee and let him and the other big comics know how happy he is to have them there. Which is why I think he got so upset with me even trying to talk to him, is because he considers himself to be above reproach and the final word and everything. And for some reason, Joe Rogan has let him get away with that, which to me, that's something that Joe Rogan should really address. I even question why Joe has him in that position, because especially when you're dealing with new comedians, and new comedians think that they're supposed to be doing new stuff all the time because that's what Adam wants to see. I can tell you, as a comedian that's been doing it forever, that is not the way you build an act. And that's the reason a lot of the comics there, the newer ones, aren't doing as well as they could be, because they're taking Adam's advice and thinking they're supposed to do new stuff all the time, when really what you should be doing as a comedian is building an act, especially a new one. You do the jokes, you tweak them a little bit, you continue to tweak them, you fine tune them. That's the way writing an act actually works. Not you're always doing new stuff. Like I said, especially in the beginning. I don't even know why he thinks that's good advice in the first place, but he's the booker and we're all supposed to bow down to him. But let's not talk about the fact that a lot of the people that are getting in right now on the newer side are off of Tony's recommendation, because Tony is kind of trying to run the club like his own. And when it comes to the number of spots that he has, Adam now has 10 spots per show. That's 8 shows that he has. So 80 spots is what he has to deal with. It's not that hard to negotiate putting up a variation of different comics and not just sticking with your favorites. But when you're giving your favorites between 4 and 6 sets a week, that definitely does take down the number. And then when you're not only doing your favorites, but also Tony Hinchcliffe's favorites, that's going to really eat into that 80. So that's where you end up falling into problems. And that's where Adam as a booker should say to Tony Hinchcliffe, hey, I know these are friends of yours. I know these are people that you really want to put up, but I also have to put up comics that are not necessarily your favorites or my favorites and just be impartial when it comes to stand-up comedy, being that this is the biggest stand-up comedy club in the world. I saw quite a few people in my comments saying, oh, you think because you're gay and you're brown that you're supposed to get these spots. This is the dumbest thing ever. If you noticed in the last video, I did not mention anything about the fact that I'm gay or brown being reasons that I should be on shows at the Mothership or get more shows at the Mothership than I had actually gotten. I really do feel like identity politics are what ruined comedy in LA. I was in LA for 14 years. And so when people are like, because I'm a woman, I should get this, or because I'm a person of color, I should get that. I am not that guy even a little bit. And to put it that way would not be fair to me or the club. Because like I said, when it comes to the club, everybody was super cool and everybody was super nice. So when I see comments like, he should have known that the masculinity at Joe Rogan's club, it's like, what are you even talking about? Nobody mentioned those things. And I've got to tell you, to be 100% honest, when it comes to Joe Rogan's club and the security there, you're right. They are those kind of guys. They are super masculine, but they're very secure in their masculinity. And there was no part of me that felt like Joe Rogan or his club is homophobic. For anybody that also might be like, you should have known Shane Gillis and his crew are homophobic. Let me stop you really quick. Shane Gillis is one of the nicest, most welcoming people ever as far as comics that are on that level and just people in general. He moved here and he brought his crew with him, which is Lemaire Lee, Sean Gardini, and of course Matt McCusker, and they're all cool. So if you think that in any way this is me saying this has something to do with the fact that I'm gay, none of it is that. And I do have to be very clear about these things because even though some people in the comments will make it sound like this guy isn't a comedian, I don't care what you guys think about that. But the entire Austin comedy scene knows. They see me all the time. There has been overwhelming support, and the biggest disservice I could do to me and the Austin comedy scene would be to lie and make things sound a way other than they are. I am not trying to shoot my credibility, and for the people that think this is about clout, I get more views on this channel when I do things that aren't comedy related, even if I mention Joe Rogan's name, than I do if I'm doing comedy related content. So if you think this is about a clout chase, you're also wrong. So another thing that I've got to mention really quick, when it came to the money situation, I was not trying to say that that is terrible money for the amount of time that we're doing. But also, if you know the way comedy works, that is not even a lot of money for those spots. For me to make $100 doing stand-up is not a lot of money. So I did want to clear that up because there was a point in the podcast where he had mentioned,
if you're a young comic, are you going to come to New York and toil away in obscurity for 4 years in destitute poverty? Being New York poor,
it's not even America.
And for that same money, you were living okay maybe in a part of Texas.
In Texas, in Austin's an expensive city in Texas.
Yes.
Yeah. You can live a good life.
You can still like split a house with some guys.
Life.
And I did have a quick and of course very civil exchange with Andrew Schultz. It wasn't long at all, but it was because when I cut the teaser for Instagram, I didn't want anybody to think that I was implying that Andrew Schultz was purposely misleading people. But if you knew the amount of people that are actually uprooting their lives, the amount of comics, and especially younger, newer comics that are uprooting their lives to be here in the Austin scene, I feel like as one of the elders that is actively on the Austin scene and does see these younger and newer comics moving here, in some cases to live in their cars, and thinking that maybe if they can just get a shot at working at the Mothership or doing sets at the Mothership, suddenly they're going to be making all this money. I do feel like I have a responsibility as a person that was a regular at the Mothership to tell these people, no, that is not going to solve all your problems. That is not going to take care of all your bills. And I'm glad I did, because I was talking to another comedian here on the scene that's actually pretty well established here in Austin, and he's a friend of mine, and he was telling me he had thought the same thing when he had originally saw Andrew Schultz Holt's podcast. He thought to himself, because he was having a rough time financially at that time, and he had heard that episode of Flagrant, and he told me that he thought to himself when he got booked on Brian Holtzman's show, which for anybody that doesn't know, Brian Holtzman, I've been a fan of him forever. I love Brian Holtzman. But he said when he got asked by Brian to be on his show that he looked up to God and was like, thank you. And he thought his problems were at least going to be closer to solved when he got that check. And then he got his check and it was $100. So I feel like if people are thinking about moving to Austin, it might be important for them to know that even if you become a regular at the Mothership, even if you're doing 4 sets a week, you're still only going to make $1,600. I don't know what anybody else's rent is, but my rent is about $1,600. So I do feel like that is important for me to let people know, because if you watch comedy commentary channels like Joke World, which is apparently just serving as like a brochure and trying to suck Austin's collective dick, because they're really not giving a balanced perspective of what Austin is like. And I even tagged them in one of the reels so that they could get a better idea, and that's still what they're putting out there. So if you ask me, Joke World, even though I did like their channel, they're not at all trying to give an actual balanced perspective of what the Austin comedy scene is. They're probably just trying to secure tickets for the Mothership or make sure they get treated well when they come to town for whatever event they decide to come to town for. This might end up being long enough for this episode. This wasn't the episode 2 that I planned, so that's the way it's gonna work. I don't care. I'll let you guys talk about that in the comments. When it comes to Mothership, I feel like the most evil person, and I do mean evil, is somebody that technically was nice to me while I was there, but I hadn't really realized the level of evil she was being, and that's a person by the name of... There was a very loved comic here in Austin by the name of Nick Roche. If you want to know the real backstory on it, I harassed both of them into moving here. That's Tony's story to tell, so...